Welcome to the Empowered Working Mom Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Jocelyn. Our podcast mission is to share stories from all working moms, whether you work outside the home or a stay-at-home mom. We believe everyone has a unique story and that we found that storytelling is a powerful way to connect and learn from each other. Because sharing and listening to each other's stories allows each of us to feel connected, supported, and inspired. And we're super excited to bring you diverse stories from fellow working moms like you. So go ahead and grab your favorite drink, get cozy, and listen in to today's story to feel acknowledged, encouraged, and most importantly, that you're not alone in this experience as a working mom. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Hey there, welcome to another episode here on the Empowered Working Mom Revolution podcast. I'm super thrilled to share today's story and conversation with you with our podcast guest, Reem Labib Tyson. And the reason why I'm super excited in sharing this story today is because of the topic that she shares within her story of postpartum depression and the postpartum experience. And this is a topic that I believe that we don't talk about enough, because when I was a young new mom over a decade ago, I would have loved to hear more stories from other moms who were experiencing their own postpartum depression or just sharing their own postpartum experience, because that way, I would have felt that I wasn't alone in my own experience of postpartum and postpartum depression, and that, I wasn't feeling, to be frank, crazy, and that something was wrong with me. And so I am so excited and just inspired by Reem's sharing in her story of her own experience with postpartum depression and her postpartum experience. And so if you're listening and you're a new mom or soon to be mom, I hope that you walk away feeling connected and informed and also just inspired by Reem's authenticity and vulnerability and honesty in sharing her experience. Because the more we share our stories, the more that we can feel connected and not alone in our experiences, and the more we can find solace in our experiences, whether it's upcoming, present, or past. So grab a cup of coffee, get cozy, and let's dive into Reem's story. Welcome to the show, Reem.
Thank you. I'm excited and nervous to be here.
I've been waiting for our conversation to just hear your story. But first, before we dive into that, I'm going to, as you all know, I love to share a mini story of how I meet our wonderful guests. And Reem, I met, it's been over a year. It's been over a year. She founded the BIPOC Coach Collective. So if you have been listening since season 1, when it was called Jam with Jocelyn, I had Alex Dumas on here, and Reem is the founder of that Coach Collective. And we have some similarities in terms of we come from the education background. That's how we really connected. And just being in the Coach Collective, it is such a fun, energetic space. So if you're a BIPOC coach, you got to come and join us. We got an awesome Slack channel too. So a lot of great things. And I think the Coach Collective just hit their 1-year anniversary. Woo woo.
Yes.
So excited to have Reem on here. And I'm going to give a professional bio here so you all get to know her. She is the founder of EDspired, a boutique consulting firm providing global leadership coaching and education consulting services. She coaches leaders from the education and nonprofit sectors who are feeling stagnant or stuck and help them figure out their next steps and take action. Reem earned a bachelor's in psychology from the George Washington University, a master's in education from George Mason University, and an executive certificate in leadership coaching from Georgetown University. And she's earned her PCC credentials through the International Coaching Federation. So welcome, Reem, again. I'm excited to hear your story and just to have a conversation about just like some significant moments that have shaped who you are, some challenges, and how you've navigated through that. So welcome to the show. And just, I love to hear more about like what is like a significant moment in your life as a working mom that has shaped who you are today and the things that you've done? You've done such amazing things, like own your own boutique firm, and you founded a coach collective. Yeah, I'd love to hear a moment.
Thanks, Jocelyn. I feel like there are so many moments. And, when you read all those things, I'm like, like, of course it sounds really fancy and I don't see it that way.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe one of the moments that I can think about really is, so I became a mother mid-career, I would say, or like a bit older. And had been a consultant for several years working for myself prior to becoming a parent. And so I felt like that was one of those things where it was, I mean, if anything, a gift to have that flexibility. There's obviously a ton of downsides to that. I'm sort of happy to share, but I think that, one of those moments was just trying to understand what balance is and isn't, and how it really did shift when I became a mom. And I think it continues to shift because I think I change, our family dynamic continues to change. So just when you think you get it, like it changes.
Oh my God, totally. Like, I got it. And you're like, wait a second.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I say it in jest, and I think so many things are comical about parenthood, but I really just think it's one of those things like you have to be like flexible. And when I say flexible, I just mean like nothing goes according to plan.
Oh, that's so hard for me as like a really type A person.
Me too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like if you create the framework, is that things will flow into that framework. But I think also when I say plan, like, okay, fine, we all have, like you said, type A, like you're my person.
Yeah.
So of course I have a plan A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
So something will happen, but it just might not be like my top choice.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you define balance? Like when you first, like mid-career, right? You're like, your business is growing, and you're like on this trajectory, and then you become a mom. And I find that, like, personally, like when I was in that space, I was like, oh my gosh, how do I define balance for myself? So how did you define balance, and how did you shift? As you said, things change, right? Like kids grow, seasons change, even like your career and the work that you do. How did you define balance from the beginning, and then how has it shifted to now for yourself?
I think in the beginning, I mean, it was surely my identity, my whole identity for a bit, which
Mm,
was really hard, especially because when in my younger years, like early career work was completely my identity, but it was also, I think it was my choice.
yeah.
Um, but that was my identity. And then shifting into like, okay, well, now you're a mom. And I didn't want that to be my sole identity. I was like, feel like there was tension there that I was
Mhm.
like, projecting that. And I also realized that like things couldn't be the way they were before. That's just, it wasn't possible. And so when I say, and I know people say like there's no balance and they use the word harmony. It's like whatever word you want to use. I just think that like it's sort of it shifts sort of depending on like what you're prioritizing at this moment in time. I think that I chose to be present with my child in a way that I did neglect work. I had to.
Yeah.
Uh, and when I say like I had to, I just like I couldn't give everything 100%. And now
Ooh, yeah. That's hard.
I can leave that there.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, like it just wasn't possible.
Yeah. That's a hard one to stomach, right? For myself, but I'm sure there's other moms who are listening here. It's like, it's hard to stomach that there's some place that you just have to kind of come to Jesus moment of like, at this season of time, I just can't give 100% to my career, and it's okay. Like it's not forever, but it's like you get to choose
Yeah.
because yeah.
And I think when you're in it, it feels like forever.
It does.
But for any newer moms who are listening, like, and people are like, oh, it'll pass. When you're in it, it feels like it will never pass. And so I think that's also just one of those things that like it, I think everything sort of takes the time it takes. But I mean, I almost feel like you have to, there's like an element of control that has to be given up,
Yeah.
whatever that means, but it things do have to shift. Or else you're going to find yourself, in a position where like you're just constantly fighting against the grain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like one other thing that I also think about is I was very resentful of like the fact that, why is it that as a female, why do I have to make all these shifts?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I struggled with that too. I was like, why do I feel like I'm the main caretaker here? And that's a hard one that's taken a long time for me to kind of to recognize, but also to feel empowered to make a change in that. Like I don't have to, like I felt that way for a long time, but then like, how can I don't have to live in that way, if that makes sense. Like I have the choice to actually like ask my spouse to, we can share this duty of, and what does that look like? But yeah, I felt that pressure to like, oh, I'm the mom.
Right.
So I should give up my career or take a break. But it was like all or nothing for me for some reason. I don't know. Is that kind of like,
Type A thing.
yeah. So this is why Reem and I connect. We're just,
Yeah, because if you want to do something, you want to do it well.
Totally.
So I think that's also part of it is like, yeah, it's like all or nothing because you want to give it 100% and do like a really good job, whatever it is. So like as a mom, I want to do a really good job. When I'm working, like I want to do a really good job, and like you just literally cannot give 110 in all of those areas all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Something you mentioned earlier about identity, because I totally resonated with what you said. Like, yeah, my work was totally my identity. And then when I became a mom, I too struggled with like which identity I more identified with, which is weird because it's like you are taking on a second identity. And it's, you said like, I just did it. You said something about like choosing, like I chose for, to be a mom, but also like it is a choice because you choose to be a mommy, right? And so I find that so interesting because I don't know about, others, but like myself and also in talking with other working moms, it's like dabbling between both identities because you're a working mom and you have an identity and profession, but then you are also mom. And it's like holding both identities feels sometimes a lot, right?
Yeah.
How did you like come to terms of like, wow, now I have two identities that I'm holding here?
I think it constantly shifts for me.
Yeah.
And I think I really like respect and value the identity or the title of being mama.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah.
Like, like, so I think part of it had to be like, I needed to reframe for myself what that meant and what it didn't mean and what, what it really looked like for me. And also like, why was that hard for me to reconcile? Like, why couldn't I be this and that? And you know what I'm saying? Like when you introduced me, you said, oh, Reem does this, that, and the other. Okay, I do. So why was it a challenge for me at the time to like center being a mom? And the more I think about it, the more I think it's because I don't want to say like historically speaking, but maybe a lot, oftentimes the women have to make sacrifices when it comes to doing their career and having children.
Mm-hmm.
Or the primary caregiver, if you will, has to make a shift. And that was something that I don't think I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do it because I felt like it was imposed upon me versus a choice. And by society, by our, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's that's really where I think a lot of the resentment or pushback came from.
Yeah. I totally get that. That's something that like, man, that's hard. That's hard to like recognize like, oh, this was like actually knowing that you have a choice. That's the hardest part to know in that moment because you mentioned like society, or for me, it's like cultural, right? There
Well,
was some
for me,
cultural expectations or just what I experienced. Like my own mom did give up her career until I was in my 20s and she went back. But like for me being a mom, I was like, I don't, I don't want to do that. Like
right,
that was really hard because it felt like I didn't appreciate being a mom to my two kids who I waited a long time for, and like that was like the conflict that made it hard too as well. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I received that with the cultural aspect too, because a lot of the messaging that you get or have received over time is pretty ingrained. Mm.
Yeah. What is one of the biggest challenges that you have overcome so far as a working mom?
I mean, I'm an educator. That's my background.
Mhm.
Having a small baby was really hard for me. I mean, I also had severe postpartum depression, anxiety, and rage, and I'm sharing this out loud because I think it's important.
Yes.
And so I didn't even, the first few years or especially the first year, but like the baby thing is really hard. You don't really get a lot of feedback. It's just very like monotonous. That's how I experienced it. And so the reason I'm sharing as an educator, I feel like as my child got older and was more school aged, it felt different. Like I felt like, oh, I can do this because as a practitioner, I understood like what was happening or how to support. And especially now, I mean, my child's in elementary school and, I know how to be more of a support. And so I feel like it's just like a different experience at this point. And so I think that reconciliation for me just comes from a place of like the entry point feels different
Yeah. Yeah.
for me right now. Like, yeah, I feel like, oh, I can do this. I get it. And I'm not saying I just got it. And I think it was for me, like the shift was going from like an infancy to like more toddler is when I felt like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you brought up the postpartum. How did you get through the postpartum and the anxiety and the rage? Because honestly, like when I look back at my years of being a mom, especially with my first one, I
Yeah.
don't think I realized I was experiencing
Yeah.
postpartum. Like because I don't think I had that in my like like perspective, or I had friends that were maybe going through it, but I understand it. And I was like probably in self-denial, which is like how I ended up at therapy. Like, I don't need therapy. I don't know that. But now looking back, I'm like, wow, I think I did experience that. But so how did you get through that? Because I think it's really important, like you said, to just be really honest and share that with other moms because I don't think we talk about it enough.
We don't.
Yeah.
And for me to even say it out loud, when like people talk about things like that happened a long time ago and it seems like it's like outdated. So even me saying it, like I have a school aged kid, like it didn't happen yesterday, but I still find it important to mention because I'm like, again, it's one of those things like if I say it, maybe someone will tell someone else. So like, hey, you should think about this.
Yeah.
But really, it was more just like, I mean, like, how the whole having a baby thing is so, what's the word? It's like romanticized is the
Oh,
word.
yes. That's a great word. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you just sort of, however you bring, however you have this baby, you bring this baby home and it's all like magical and the smell of the new baby and all the things, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. That's not what I experienced at all. And I just remember like, as women, we go to the doctor frequently up until the baby's born and then there's nothing.
Yeah.
And that postpartum care for women, I mean, I remember we'd go to the pediatrician and I would just be
Yeah.
looking at the pediatrician almost like, can you help me?
Hmm. Yeah.
I told you I wasn't going to cry out.
Uh-uh.
And so, like it was almost like being like a shell of a person. I'm supposed to be happy with this baby, but like
Yeah.
And so I remember going to my 6-week appointment. My doctor's like, "How are you doing?" And
Mhm.
I hated. And then she's like, how are you? And I said, "Well, I mean, thank God for Google. I don't know how people took babies home in the past.
Yeah.
I don't like, I mean, I don't, but really, like, what did you do? How do you, like, even with Google, like, no one knows what to do. But I remember the doctor saying, like, how are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm curious about like baby blues because I'd read about baby blues."
Baby blues. Uh-huh.
And so she asked me some more questions. And then she's like, "That doesn't sound like baby blues. It sounds like more like postpartum." I was like, "Okay." And so, and I think it was just because, like, I would sort of just tell like random things like, "I'm feeling this," or "This song will come on the radio and I can't stop crying," or "I can't," it was just everything
Mhm.
was very like heavy. And so she had referred me to a reproductive psychiatrist, which most people don't know exactly.
I didn't know that. I was like, what is that? I've heard of psychiatrists, but a reproductive.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. I wish I had known that.
And so, I mean, I guess, long story short, like I was put on medication and, I'm sure if I had more of like a bandwidth to do some therapy, but I just like, I needed help. And, I think it took me, and this is really interesting. I found out, I don't know how, I feel like I was telling one of the doctors or someone that like that, that baby smell I know that what they talk about, like I would literally sniff my kid all the time. And I was like, "I don't smell anything." And it turns out when you have postpartum depression, like you actually don't have that ability to
Oh,
smell your baby that same way.
oh, interesting.
And that was fascinating to me because I was like, "What are people talking about smell?" And so when he was like older, it's sort of like before kids are old enough to like stink. Um, then I could smell it. I was like, "Oh, I get it now." It's just that very like, I don't know, like smell of like a human that doesn't have like a body, I guess. And I'm sure this is not where you were expecting this conversation to go, but I mean, this is real talk and
Yeah.
managing all of this while still working.
Yeah. That's like, man, that's a lot, right? Because it's like you're also trying to, yeah, professional, right? Professional Reem, but then also like new mom working through your mental health
Right.
and
And
trying to
then,
just keep a baby alive at the same time.
well, and then not sleeping and
Yeah.
like obviously not being able to like even be coherent.
I resonate with that because I, I remember my first week coming back from, I had a C-section, but I ended up in the emergency room almost dying because I I don't know what happened. I mean, I do know what happened. It was just I was just so overwhelmed as a new mom, but I also was not in the right frame of mind as well.
Yeah.
So physically, but also mentally, like everyone experiences postpartum differently and postpartum depression. But like for me, it was like I would have like these thoughts of like possibly hurting my baby. And I'm like, why am I having these thoughts? And I would just deny it. And it just like it would happen. I'd be like, oh my gosh, why am I thinking that
Yeah.
I'm gonna like hurt my baby? Like I want to hurt my baby. Like that it's like be honest, everyone. This is like true, like honesty, like of how people experience it, right? And like I would tell my husband, like, I don't something's wrong with me, but I feel like I don't know where this is coming from. I love my baby, I do, but there's like this thought that just comes and it just comes at random times. Like whether I'm sitting late at night and I'm nursing her or something, it's just weird. But in that point, I'm like, I should have reached out, but instead I denied and I was like, oh no, no, this will pass.
Yeah. But
So in all respects, reach out for help.
well, there, it didn't feel like there was like an like easy path to get support.
So true.
Because even if you were feeling like that and you're like, "Okay, yeah, you can Google something," but where are you supposed to go with that?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like you leave the hospital and they're like, "If you feel this, call this number." That doesn't happen.
No, no. Like we got, like I remember, I mean, I think we're going in a rabbit hole, but I remember like when you leave the hospital, like here, if you need help with lactation, here, if you need, support, like a support group, but then you had to get yourself there. And honestly, I just didn't have the bandwidth. And also, I think I felt kind of shame in terms of that I was feeling this way or thinking this way.
Mhm.
And so to get myself to actually go was like, that takes a lot of courage too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, like, you went through postpartum. What are some difficult decisions you've had to make as a working mom now that like your son is in elementary school, right? Yeah.
So, I mean, I would say up until now, I mean, a few things. So one, I I was one of those people who like early when I said like my work was my identity. So my early career, I was a teacher, but I became a school leader very young. I was an assistant principal at age 26 and a school principal at age 27 and worked on a district level like very early. And when the reason I'm sharing that is to say like I chose to put my career first when I had friends who were like getting married and starting families at the same time. And so I feel like I already know what the grind looked like, and I know what it felt like. And I know that's not what I wanted at this stage. And there are times where I'm like, oh, I wonder if I should be doing like XYZ. And I'm like, I like, that's not what I want. I don't want to be so stressed out that I can't be present for my kid.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you kind of really stayed true to knowing, like, I talk a lot about values, but like what's important to you.
Yeah. I mean, so like, I just knew I couldn't do all those things well, but I also knew that like I had already done the grind. And quite frankly, now that I'm farther along on this journey of just really understanding, dominant culture and whatnot, I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want to work for 70 hours a week, and all that comes with it. And for those who do, I respect you. And honestly, like, I'm sure it's wonderful. That's just not what I want. Not now, but probably not ever.
Yeah.
I also don't want to model that way of being for my child, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is I I do put myself first. And it sounds selfish, but it is selfish because you have to, like, some people call it self-care, other people call it self-preservation. But when I say put myself first, I mean I put myself on the schedule first so I can be the best version of myself for everyone else. So if that means that it's not like, oh, I can't work out because I had to do, no, I have to go work out.
Yeah.
And I can do the things.
Yeah.
Does it always work so beautifully in terms of like, does it, no, but at the same time, I just know that like, if I'm not taking care of myself, I can't take care of anyone else. Like, just doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love what you said. Is in order to be your best version of yourself, you have to prioritize yourself first. Yeah. Because it's like that cliche, like phrase of like, you gotta fill your cup first, overflow your cup.
Yeah. But it's true. I mean, and we know that, right? Like we know how like we're not present or we're like irritated or, whatever else it is. I mean, just to give you an example, I know that I have tomorrow's Saturday. I have a long day of activities with my child tomorrow. My husband's working, but like we've all established these pieces. And I was like, I'm not going to work out tomorrow so that I'm not like in a rush to then get to the soccer so I've already like made that decision. So I feel like I'm okay with it because I made that choice. Because the other choice would be wake up even earlier, but like it's Friday, I'm tired. You know what I mean? But then my kids felt that I'm irritated. It's not like I just, just trying to be like really aware of like myself, but my impact on the others around me.
So I love what you're saying because it sounds so empowering. Like you have total agency, right? Like over the choices that you're making. And I've come across like, friends who are working moms and just like, there's this like barrier that makes it hard to actually like do what you said, like prioritize, like, it, but then it's hard to do it.
Yeah.
Like like, what do you have suggestions? I'm like, because, like, it's like that, oh, I know it, but then somehow we just don't prioritize ourselves, whether it's because mom guilt or just the caretaking, thing that we talked earlier about. There's a societal, cultural, whatever. But it's like, how do we break, break that cycle of just, and actually like be in our agency and actually do that action?
I mean, I wish I had like an easy answer.
Yeah.
It's different for everyone, but I also think like, how, do you ever do like the wheel of life activity?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, there's something it comes up for me a lot that I read that like, you can't give 110% in your relationship, your family, your work, your health, your right. Like,
Yeah.
And for those who do great, I don't know how they do that, but also like something has to either like suffer or get left off the plate. And what is that? So it just might be like in this season, friendships and seeing people in person as often, maybe that's not the priority right now. It doesn't mean I don't value, I'm, giving an example. I mean, I don't value my friends or these people or whatever, but, maybe I just can't see them as often because I'm spending more time on myself.
Yeah.
And I just think like, whatever it is that you have to, like whatever it is that's really important to you. I mean, for me, exercise, like movement is medicine. Like I don't feel good if I don't move.
Yeah.
And so I know that I'm better for it when I do. So part of it, and I actually enjoy it, but part of it is like, I just know that about myself. That's how I've been since I was 18. And so that's not going to change.
Yeah.
So that's something that I just feel like I know I have to center that, but I also make sure that, I mean, what I tell anyone, I'm like, if you're a working parent, like, you're managing a calendar, like put yourself on the calendar, look through your week, put yourself on the calendar first.
Yeah.
Like, you need to go, get your eyes checked. Like you need
make an appointment. Yeah.
You want to get your nails done? Okay. But like put it on the calendar and like make the appointment and like lock it in the same way you do the meetings for work. Cause I'm sure you're excellent at work and I'm sure you're excellent as a parent. Right. But then like, if you're also leaving yourself off, like that's, the only person getting harmed in the equation is you.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. You're like the fifth person that I've talked to like this week about like making an appointment for yourself, like using your, like if you use the calendar, I live by my Google Calendar. So if I miss something, you can blame the Google Calendar or you can blame the person who didn't put it in the Google. But like it's definitely true, like to utilize like your accountability systems to help you prioritize yourself. And at first it might feel kind of like
weird,
weird, like weird, but also I'm like, but then you'll actually feel better. Like you'll actually feel good and you'll notice, like, I love what you said. You have to think about the impacts of it. Right? I totally know when I'm like when my kids are having a tantrum, even though they're in middle school, they still have tantrums. When they're having a tantrum, it's because they're also feeding off of my irritation. Like I'm super annoyed.
Well, and they're also right, and their needs are probably not being met somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
It's the same thing with me. Like I will have a tantrum if my needs are not being met.
Mm-hmm.
I'm responsible for meeting my needs, and so the tantrum thing is real. So.
Yes, as a mom and working mom, we have tantrums too. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing just like your significant moments and how you navigated through the challenges that you've had. Especially, I really appreciate the postpartum conversation because I feel like we should be talking about that more often. And as a working mom, and then also just how prioritizing yourself, because that is the hardest part, because I think we've been so conditioned to just be I'm putting in air quotes, full-time caretaker, when we need to be caretaking ourselves first in order to caretake in the way that's best for us and things like that. So I appreciate your time, Reem, and sharing and the tears.
I shouldn't have talked about it before. No, I thank you, Jocelyn. I appreciate you inviting me and just sort of letting us free flow and see where it goes. And surely didn't go where I would have expected it to go.
Yeah.
Or honestly, where I wouldn't have given myself permission to go there years ago. Because it's like I'm not like this is a work conversation. Like I need to be this person. I think that's just like maybe another thing to leave folks with is like, you just really need to be like your whole self as much as you can be in all spaces because you're already carrying so much.
Okay. Before we end, I love that because that was like a truth bomb right there. Like, what got you to be able to be where you like in that space, in that like rounded center space of just being
Yeah.
all of you in no matter what space, right? Instead of compartmentalizing yourself of professional versus mom, right? Between the two
Yeah.
identities. Because I feel like that's something that we sometimes struggle with of like, I'm going to be this person, but then at home, I'm this, but
Yeah.
how can you just be you in all the spaces?
I mean, I think it took me, at least maybe 4 years to get there. So it wasn't a short ride.
Yeah.
I think the shift is like once you get out of caregiving to parenting, because there is a shift.
Mm.
I think for me, that's when the shift felt easier because I was like, oh, I can parent better than I can caregive, even though I can do both, but one didn't feel as good.
Hmm.
I don't even know if I answered your question.
Yeah. I'm hearing it's like understanding yourself in depending on the season of life of what resonates for you and how you want to show up. And then allowing yourself a lot of grace. Because I'm hearing in the caregiving phase, it's like, didn't really resonate with me, but you still navigated through it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also you don't have to like it. It doesn't mean you don't like your kid.
And that's okay. Oh my gosh, that's such a truth bomb right there, Reem.
All the time are like, well, like I had to get babysit and go out, but I love my kid. You don't have to say the part. We know you like we hope you love your kid, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like there doesn't need to be any, like you're a person and it's draining and humans are draining. So, you have to take care of yourself. This is what is it? This is the long game.
Yeah.
So
we're in it for the long game, y'all. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. How can people connect with you if they want to connect with you?
I think the best way, I'm on LinkedIn all the time, probably too much. I am on Instagram as well. I'm under EDspired LLC. I'm on Instagram under my name, Reem Labib Tyson, but also just like happy to connect about parenting, coaching, education. I have a lot of random things I like to talk about too. So I'm open.
Yeah.
I actually have I do have an Instagram that is about parenting and identity. So maybe I'll share that with you at some point.
Yeah, sure. I didn't know that, but yes, I think we're both on LinkedIn a lot too. So come join us on LinkedIn or come join us on BIPOC Coach Collective if you're a coach or consultant. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Reem, for being on the podcast. Once again, thanks for tuning in today. If you have not subscribed to our podcast, go ahead and click subscribe so you don't miss out on future stories here on the Empower Working Mom Revolution podcast. And lastly, support the podcast by being a podcast sponsor. We are looking for sponsors as our podcast continues to grow. And as a sponsor, your donation supports the podcast and enables us to create and spread more heartwarming stories of working moms worldwide. This helps every mom feel acknowledged, understood, and a part of a supportive community. So please consider making a one-time or monthly donation to support the podcast. And as a thank you, your name will be added to our podcast website's thank you sponsors list. You can click the link in the show notes to donate $7 or choose your preferred amount, and we really appreciate your support. So have a great rest of your week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.